never, never elusive forever. It will be realized. All great literature is a struggle. Even when they are depicting disharmony, they are silent protesting against disharmony. And the pointer is towards a harmony which can be achieved one day. And that is probably a clue to our coming together, trying to achieve some kind of harmony in our existence, and a faith in the future of man, a faith in the inner being which sustains us despite all the conflicting forces, that alone can bring into literature a new horizon, a new spirit, and a new confidence. Today, indeed, we are going through an evolutionary crisis. Dear friends, I thank you very much for having given me a very kind hearing.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think if you really enjoyed this awesome, awe-inspiring address by Professor Manoj Das, he deserves a larger round of applause. Thank you. Well, Mr. Kailash Singh has already spoken a little about her, but let me tell you something more. She is the heartthrob of millions. She has acted over 30 feature films in 10 different languages, all with directors of international repute. Firak, her directorial debut feature film, had its world premiere at the Toronto International Film Festival in 2008, and it traveled to more than 50 international film festivals across the world, winning over 10 international awards and 13 Indian awards. She has attracted the attention and appreciation of artists, critics, and film lovers across the globe, both as an actor and a director. She has been a member of the prestigious jury at Cannes Film Festival in 2005, the Karlovy Vary International Film Festival in 2007, and the Marrakech International Film Festival in 2009. The French government conferred her with the Knight of the Order of Arts and Letters, a very prestigious civilian award, in 2011. She was the first Indian to be inducted into the Hall of Fame of the International Women's Forum, Washington, D.C. Her regular column in The Week, Last Word, is very, very inspiring and illuminating. I can go on forever, but it gives me great pleasure to now invite to speak to you the one and only Miss Nandita Das.
Talking about harmony, what you said, I think my biggest inspiration is to meet people of your generation. And I was telling this to Mr. Sitanshu Yashashchandra also. What right do we have? I mean, in the sense, yes, everybody talks about the young and, the future. I'm in the middle age group, which is neither really young. I've passed the youth, so to say, technically speaking. And I have a few gray hair that have been hidden, but I don't quite qualify to be the elder generation, but somewhere in the middle. And I think what we have really gained from Sitakant Babu, Manoj Babu, Ramakant Rathos, Sitanshu Yashashchandra, and all the other, Shudeep, you are still sort of young, so I'm not going to name you, but all the other wonderful writers, thinkers, philosophers, artists, social workers, is this undying belief in life, the kind of optimism that one sees. Lot of us, the younger lot, we tend to become cynical more quickly. And I've always wondered how does this happen? You have seen a much longer life, lots of experiences, the good old times. if Sri Aurobindo also said that there was a bankruptcy of, evolution was under, what was the exact word you said? Evolutionary crisis. If he said that in his times, what are we going to say? So I think all of us are eternally in transition when we always kind of feel more nostalgic and almost romantic about the good old days. But we can only know now and we can only speak from where we are. So from that point of view, I think when I see many of you who have seen much greater times, much longer lives, have experienced the actual good old times where there were much more truth, much more honesty, less compromises, more conviction, and yet you keep your optimism. And I think that for me has been the greatest inspiration. Whenever one has slipped into cynicism, into pessimism, calling it realism, one is constantly reminded that actually we only have optimism to fall back on. I think cynicism is for the lazy, for those of us who don't want to do anything. And that little line that we straddle, which is between thinking that we are one drop in the ocean, but we are the ones who are going to change it, and yet not become arrogant about that change and to believe that yes, we are going to change the world. So that line that we straddle is something that keeps me going. Of course, I'm a great lover of literature too. I have to confess, in the last few years, reading has gone down phenomenally thanks to my little child, Vihan, who is 2 years old. But learning comes from many different places, and I think my child has been a great teacher too. Through him, I'm learning to look at life differently, looking at all the paradoxes and contradictions that you spoke about, and trying to come to terms with it and think and find answers to them in my own little way. Not that we have answers to everything, and not that we are going to fool our children with those false answers, but to try and find them so that at least we can somewhere inculcate that questioning. And I think questioning often is the basis of our desire to find those answers. The little writing that I have done, and I thought I would share a little bit of that. I'm sorry, I'm going to just go and get my water. Every week, as the person who introduced me said, that I do write a column for the magazine called The Week. And it's a weekly magazine, but I do a monthly column. And even though I told them I can only do once a month, somehow the deadline seems to come rather soon. And I often wonder, what do I talk about? And lots of my friends say, oh, you always write about serious things. And every time the deadline comes and I tell myself, I'm going to write something that's fun, that's light. Life doesn't have to be all so serious. And invariably, I feel this is one opportunity to share. And do I want to let go of it by writing something light? And it's not even a conscious choice, but invariably I find myself writing about something that I'm troubled by. And this big debate about should art be for the sake of art, or should it be for a larger social consciousness. But intuitively, and you left it at a very good note of intuition, if intuitively you get drawn to something that you feel will have a larger social consciousness, I feel every month that I don't need to fight it. I don't need to sort of prove it either, that yes, art can also be for the sake of art, which is also beautiful. Why should there be this pressure on writers and poets and painters, and being a daughter of a painter and a writer, I see that, but when we say for the sake of art, we somewhere kind of assume that human suffering or just human relationship or all these smaller things, or a talk about a flower or a bunch of flowers, as you said, all of this is not with a social consciousness. Everything is, and I think that's why the topic that this festival has chosen, Hymn for Harmony, I think is very beautiful, because that is what we need the most. There is disharmony all around us, but there is also so much harmony. And how do we try and retain it? So every month when I sit down to write, it is this quest somewhere for harmony. Whether it is the last one that I wrote, which is probably going to come out this week, it is titled At My Own Peril, because I think to talk about Bal Thackeray and to talk about Kasab, is at one's own peril in the times that we live in. You know, sometimes it's about a child, sometimes it's about the issues of women, sometimes it is just these little stories that you see around yourself. The other little writing that I've done is for my first film, Firak, and that again came from a deep desire to tell the story of what happened in Gujarat in 2002. And yet again, it's not a big political statement, but just human stories, how we deal with violence that overtly is over, but everything that lingers on after that overt violence. A sense of guilt, anger, desire to take revenge, struggling with identity, all of these emotions, and how do we human beings deal with that. I also just wrote a play called Between the Lines that we've been traveling with, which deals with the subtle inequalities that exist in our class of people. And when I say our class of people, is the educated, the more affluent, the more privileged, where we assume that relationships are far more equal. Because every time we talk about inequality, we end up talking about the working class, the poorer people, those who are not educated, those who are traditional, are conservative. But all the subtler and more deceptive inequalities that exist in our class, we kind of don't often talk about it. And the play deals with a relationship between a lawyer couple and how, when they are faced with a case where they are fighting against each other, how it throws up issues and how the case in court impacts their relationship at home. And I was juggling with many different things with my little child, being the chairperson of Children's Film Society, all other commitments, and I was writing this play thinking that the play would be an easier journey than writing or working on a film. And I was telling a friend that I don't know why I took this up, and you know, I'm completely going crazy. And she said, you wouldn't have written this play had you not been going crazy, because the whole play is about how women juggle between all the roles that they play that we don't often complain about, or some of us who think we are more progressive and more liberal, we complain about it, yet we still do the same old things. Not much has changed actually in the last 30 years. So I think this ability or this desire to be able to express yourself from where you are at that given point. I don't think I could have written this play 4 years ago when I was not juggling as much or was juggling with other things, or I can write it maybe 10 years later. So to be able to respond to that, I think it's such a gift. Of course, I am no writer, so I just go with my instinct. There's lots that I have to learn. But sometimes not knowing an art form also frees you from its grammar. Like I directed the film or I directed the play, because I don't know the grammar, sometimes you're not bound by its beginning, middle and end, or whatever structure it kind of enforces on you. But also it is a work in progress constantly. Well, film doesn't allow you that much, but the theatre does. So we've only done 15 shows, but it's constantly evolving, and I'm learning on the job, so to say. So my little brush with writing has been so cathartic, and I think I've become more inward looking than I was doing other work that constantly involved working with other people. I think in our mad lives, we sometimes don't really find that time to look inward, and I'm truly envious of all you wonderful writers who have so much opportunity through your own work to be able to look inwards and to give us these gems that enrich our lives. So thank you very much for calling me and giving me the opportunity to share. And sadly, because I've left my child in Bombay, I won't be able to hear a lot of you. But I do hope with this technology that you'll put it all on YouTube and that we can sit at our homes and get the benefit of listening to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Nandita Das. Kindly stay on stage and invite Professor Manoj Das also on stage for felicitations. Thank you.
And with that, I request Mr. Kailash Singh and Mr. Ranjan Padi, head the Times of India, Odisha, to kindly present mementos to Professor Manoj Das and Ms. Nandita Das. So ladies and gentlemen, this indeed is an heartfelt beginning. Can we really have a bigger round of applause? And with that, for the vote of thanks, I request Mr. Ranjan Padhi to please step forward to the podium.
Very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, on behalf of the Think Literature team, the Times of India and TEFLAS, I would like to thank our distinguished guest and India's foremost story writer, Professor Manoj Das. Thank you, sir, for having found time from your busy schedule to be with us. I would then like to thank the very well-known and admired film actor and director, Ms. Nandita Das, to have found time to be with us on this great occasion. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us. I would now like to thank our distinguished panel of speakers and panelists, our sponsors, guest participants, and the media for your valuable time and support. I wish you all for a wonderful and intellectually stimulating 2 days with us in this Think Literature Conclave. Thank you very much.
With that, we'd like to say a big thank you to all our delegates here on the dais for the keynote session. Thank you so much for your precious time and gracious presence. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's have a big round of applause. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, the mood is upbeat, and on a very high note, we shall move and proceed into our session 1.
And no wonder the forest looked enchanted as much as the glade, the silver brook running across it, bubbling sweetly all the while. The forlorn princess stood leaning against a champak tree, teeming with golden flowers that flooded and delighted the region with exotic fragrance. All of a sudden, a huge shadow fell across the glade, and the princess saw a giant regarding her with what appeared to be the very height of curiosity. And the story rolls on and on and on. Short stories are like soft shadows set out, or imprints of faint footprints. The story of the human race is the story of men and women cutting themselves short. But what in fact is a short story? Is it popular wisdom or commercial reality? Let us listen to our panelists.
Thank you once again, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to start our first session, short story, popular versus serious, sorting out the short story. The storyteller has to show the universe in a grain of sand. His canvas is limited, but he has to use the canvas so deftly that the sun gets reflected in a drop of dew. Looking deeply into a pinda, the short story reveals the all-encompassing Brahmanda. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome our panelists on stage. I would first like to welcome academician and creative writer, Madam Gopa Naik, who's the moderator for this session. I would like to welcome her on stage first. And I would also like our panelists to please come up on stage. Our guest panelists for the first session are Ms. Paul Zakaria, Ms. Yashodhara Mishra, Annie Zaidi, and Dipti Ranjan Patnaik. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our moderator and our panelists for the session Short Story, Popular versus Serious, Sorting Out the Short Story.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the first session of Think Literature. I am very honored and privileged to be moderating this session with some of the great writers of our country. And we would be having an interactive session. So your thoughts and questions will make this session interesting. And I hope that you will be active participants in that. Well, the way we have organized this is at the end of the session, about 10-15 minutes, we'll keep for the questions. You can pose any questions to our writers, and I'm sure they will be happy to share their views with you. So first, instead of me introducing the writers, I would like them to introduce themselves. First, may I ask Annie to have a few words with you, the way she would like you to see her. Thank you. She's going to just take read something for you.
Hello, my name is Annie Zaidi. I think I really don't know how to introduce myself. I can't introduce myself as a great writer because I'm nowhere near that yet. But what I can say is that, well, I currently live in Bombay. I've had a couple of books out, 3 in fact. My first book was non-fiction. The last 2 have been short stories. The second one was called The Bad Boy's Guide to the Good Indian Girl. The Good Indian Girl is co-written. It's a collection of short stories. Each short story is linked to the other one in some way. It was co-written with another writer called Smriti Ravindra. She is a college friend and also a writer of short stories. My newest collection is called Love Stories, number 1 to 14. It's a very small one. And perhaps by way of introduction, it would make sense if I just read from the book, because a writer's real introduction is their work.
Thank you, Annie. I will definitely come back to your story. When I remember I've sent an email to Annie saying that you need to introduce yourself, and she said that I'll go by the spontaneous flow of the audience. So that was a nice spontaneous flow of your introduction. May I request Ma'am Yashodhara Mishra to please say a few words about herself, though we know that the audience here is quite conversant with her writings. Thank you.
Thank you, Gopa. I write short stories, and I have written some novels also, and also some poetry. I have also translated some works from different other languages like English and Hindi. I teach English in a college. I think that's about all. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get to know more of her when we interact with you all. Can I now please request Paul? I know Paul is very reluctant to give an introduction about himself, but I think for our audience, Paul must say a few words to us. And Paul has been to Odisha. I think it is his 3rd visit, if I'm not wrong. And people of Odisha has seen his interviews on the TV and all. So maybe he could add something new on his latest visit here. Thank you, Paul.
Well, my name is Paul Zakaria. I write in Malayalam. I live in Kerala, Trivandrum. I've been writing for a fairly long time. And short stories, small novels, columns. That's it. I'm here. Thank you.
Writers are always humble people. Well, let's see how I take out their humility and let them speak during the session. And last but not least, our very own Dipti Ranjan Patnaik. His writings are very serious. I hope his introduction is not that serious. Thank you, Dipti.
I teach English. I have published 6 volumes of short stories. I might appear to be an old man, but my mental age is 10. Thank you very much.
That was an excellent introduction. That was an excellent introduction. So now we'll go back to our questions. But before that, what I would like to take the discussion next is, these writers were very humble in what they told them about us. But in spite of all this, I think creative writing comes as an add-on to life. It's never the bread and butter. I remember my professor saying that you can write poetry, but you have to earn your bread somewhere else. So basically, I think all these writers have something other than their creative writing. My first question to all of them would be, how do they see short story in all the creative genres? May I start with Annie? Because Annie writes different kind of genres, and her latest book, Love Story, I have read one of the stories which hit me hard, is the story of a woman, and not so young, who is kind of in love with the voice in the railway station that she travels every day. So what I would like to say, that in this short story, she has given a very, very serious outlook about love, and I would like her to throw some light on how serious she thinks love stories are, and how does she think that the general public will relate to these kind of love stories. Thank you, Annie.